We could all use small houseplants that fit into nooks and crannies to satisfy our plant obsession. So here are 5 small houseplants highlight edition. Welcome back everybody to Untitled Chapter with another video where I talk about 5 small houseplants that will stay more or less quite small, and some of them actually are also some new favorites of mine, and this is the highlight edition. So all of these plants require quite the high light intensity. So let's dive right in. So the first plant that stays really small are Haworthias. They don't really get bigger than this. They form small clumps, so they form pups, but talking about height, they don't get much higher than this. You can really see the clump forming habit of them, and I feel like the older they get, the more beautiful they will get, and you can have really so many different varieties. You can have these purple ones. This is Haworthia atrofusca watermelon, and this is the variegated form, and if you put them in highlight conditions, they will get these violet and red hues, especially if they dry out. Now this one I like especially because the newer leaves are much lighter compared to the old ones, so you get this beautiful ombre gradient to the center of the plant, and it's just a joy to grow them because they look like little crystals, little gems, because depending on the Haworthia, the leaves or the top of the leaves are translucent. With this atrofusca watermelon, you have the complete top of the leaves which are translucent, and if you look at them through the light, it's just like a small little prism. It's just so beautiful, so amazing. I really love them. And you can have also other types of variegation. This one is a little bit more leaning into the creamier side, but you still get those purple hues on the green parts of the leaves, and with this one you have the translucent tops of the leaves. Yeah, this is so beautiful. These are really doing great for me because you can see the roots coming out of the bottom, which is really nice and makes me very happy. And here is another one, Haworthia magnifica, which is even more flat than the other ones, has also a little bit of this transparency going on the top of the leaves, but with this one I really love that when it dries out, it is showing so many different colors from red to yellow to orange, and once it gets watered, it reverts back to this nice looking green color. What I really love about Haworthias is they always tell you when they need to be watered. Either it's with different coloration, so they get red, yellow and purple, for example, or they just shrivel up, which is not a bad thing. They will plump up again once you water them again. So these are just amazing. I would say these are perfect for beginners. If you get the soil right, they need an airy mix, mix a lot of pumice in there. I would say 70 to 80% inorganic materia like pumice or leca or something like that, and just 20 to 30% soil, otherwise they will rot easily. And I just have to water them once every 2 weeks, although they are in a very hot and very bright tent. Very easy plants, stay very small, are beautiful. These are, I would say, collectibles. You can never have enough of them because they look so different. Even especially those 3, they look so different, and they make a great collection. So the second type of plant that stays really small are sedums, and I have also 2 different types of sedums right here. This is Sedum Joyce Tulloch, which is a variegated form, and I forgot the name of this one. I have to keep up with my name tag game. This is also variegated, and what I really love about them is that they also stay really small. They are super easy to propagate, and they just have so many different forms. You have so many different cultivars of sedums. You also have non-variegated forms if you do prefer them, but with the variegated ones you really get super nice color plays, like with this one, for example. On the leaf tips you have this cherry coloration, almost leaning into rose color, and then this nice blue glaucous variegation on the base of the leaves, which is really nice. And the newer leaves are also a little bit lighter compared to the old ones, which is a really fun color play. And with this one also you have these pink and purple and reddish hues on the the older leaves, especially when it dries out a little bit, you get this more intense coloration, and this is a really beautiful plant also. I really like them because they can dry out. They are a little bit more sensitive when it comes to drying out because they tend to lose their lower leaves, which is not a bad thing. Sometimes they do look even better when they lose some of their old leaves, because then you get this bonsai-ish kind of vibe to them. They look a little bit older, they look a little bit withered, and that can be really beautiful, but sometimes this can be a little bit annoying because then you lose the older leaves and then they look just a little bit dry and desiccated and a little bit stressed. But they can take quite some dry periods, especially if they have a good root system. They can bounce back really quickly, and you can also influence the growth habit of these plants depending on how you fertilize them. If you fertilize them a little bit more, let's say 600 microsiemens, then they will also grow faster and you will get a little bit bushier plants, but they will never get really tall depending on the cultivars, but they will grow more sideways and get more bushier over time. I would also say that these are beginner plants because they can bounce back quite quickly, especially if you make some mistakes regarding to watering. They do not like to be overwatered, so tend to water them a little bit less than you think is necessary. Then they can bounce back quite quickly. And even if you do some mistakes in the other direction, let's say you overwatered them and the root system is completely ruined, you can take some cuttings. You don't need to take full stem cuttings. You can also take leaf cuttings and root them in a suitable media. With these ones, I would say use a little bit more organic media, up to 50%, to enable the substrate to hold on to a little bit more moisture, because they need a little bit more moisture compared to Haworthias, and they are a little bit less prone to rot compared to Haworthias. But if you live in a very wet climate where it rains multiple times a day or once a day, I would say cut back on the organic media and go with a higher percentage of inorganic media. I really like pumice in my media because it holds on to quite some moisture, but also has these little air pockets to enable some aeration in the substrate. So that's a really nice inorganic substrate to have. So the next type of plant that won't get really big are Echeverias, and here I have Echeveria frosty and the cristata form. Especially the cristata forms won't get too big because they are growing really slowly, at least in my care, because they have so many meristems and so many growth points that they have to divide all their strengths among those different growth points. So that really slows down their growth. With these cristata forms, you will get a bushier type of growth. They won't grow very tall, but that's a really nice plant. I love the cascading form, and especially with this cultivar, you have all those different types of colors. When the leaves are dying, they tend to get these yellowish, purplish, reddish hues. So I don't like to remove them because this is a really nice color play and it is not hurting the plant. They are not rotting, and I really love how this plant is looking. I have this for quite some time now and it hasn't grown very much since then. It put out new leaves, but height-wise and width-wise, nothing has happened. So if you have small spaces and really high light conditions, that is the plant for you. Well, I wouldn't say that all Echeverias need really high light, but the higher the light, the smaller the plants will stay, because normal Echeverias, if they are not the cristata form, they can get really leggy if they don't receive enough sunlight or artificial light, and you can influence the growth habit. If they receive more light, the plants and the rosettes are more compact, the leaves are smaller, they are more sturdy, and they have more substance to it. I think with this frosty hybrid, they can take much more light because they have this hairy texture to their leaves. They are probably able to reflect most of the incoming light from their leaves, and they can also hold on probably to a lot of light because of these hairs, because then you have a layer on top of the leaves which prevents evaporation from going on top of the leaves and also on the bottom of the leaves. Usually hairy plants can can take much more drought compared to non-hairy leaves. So this is a really fun cultivar. But with Echeverias you can have so many different cultivars. You can have curly leaves, you can have variegated leaves, you can have smooth leaves, you can have hairy leaves, you can have gray leaves, and every different color combination you can imagine, there's an Echeveria for you. And also the growth habits are really different. In the old days you only had those Echeverias that formed this classical rosette, but nowadays you can have also ones that branch out more, that look a little bit like bonsais. You can have crostata forms. You can have so many different types of Echeverias, and I bet that there's an Echeveria for every taste. So if you have moderate to high light conditions, this is the plant to get. What's also really fun about Echeverias is that you also can take leaf cuttings. You don't need to take stem cuttings. Sometimes you can see small little rosettes forming on some older leaves which are about to fall off. Sometimes they fall off on the substrate and form small plants, and then you can just place them on some substrate and they will root into the substrate, and voila, you have a new plant, which is really fun and interesting way to propagate them. With Echeverias you also nowadays have some intergeneric hybrids, like for example Echeverias, where you cross a Sedum and an Echeveria and you get a Echeveria. And with most intergeneric hybrids they are much easier to care for because they combine the traits of the two parents. Then you get a mix of the genes of the two parents, and this can lead to a broader spectrum in which the plants can survive. This can go into the direction, for example, with Echeverias. Sedums can take much more moisture compared to Echeverias. So if you cross Sedums and Echeverias, you get a plant that is much more tolerant to drought and to moisture, which is really nice. So the next plant that stays really small is a Dwarf Aloe, and I just got recently into them. You can have so many different forms of Dwarf Aloes, different color forms. You can have different leaf shapes, and also the scaling on top of the leaves can be quite different. I bought a bunch of different types of colors, but now they all turned more or less the same red hue, but I'm not complaining. They were just really heat stressed and also a little bit drought stressed, which is fine, but they didn't mind, and they did even put out some flower stalks for me. But yeah, this is a really nice plant. Since I got it, it didn't put out any new height. I think it got some new leaves, but they just get droopy over time, so the height gain over time is negligible, I would say. And these are just amazing. They can take so much drought. They can take the most intense sunlight you can imagine. They are sitting on a rooftop outside of my flat, and they get full sun from morning till evening, and the roof heats up also from underneath. So they are really in extreme conditions, and they are looking all quite nice, I would say. They look like they are not doing anything, but I think they are growing. At least they are flowering. What is a little bit concerning for me is that they didn't put out a ton of roots, but maybe they are not that type of girl. Maybe they just don't root too much. They are not dying, so I think they are doing great for me. I hope that when they get a little bit less light, they will revert back to their different colorations, because I had multiple types with blue hues and also purple hues, and they looked really otherworldly, because you don't really get those types of colors in other leafy plants. At least I haven't seen them. They looked almost really fake. But I also do like this red coloration, and these scales are really interesting. I've never seen that before, and I think that's a really nice addition to any plant collection. If you are into this deserty rock garden vibe, it is a pop of color and almost looks like a flower. Really interesting in a greenish display. It really pops out. So the last and the fifth plant that stays really small is Oxalis megaloritza. But with this one, you really have to make sure that this plant gets the most light it can get. Otherwise, it can get really laggy, and then it is not a small plant anymore. And at least in my opinion, when these plants get leggy, they don't look as beautiful as as they can look when they receive more light. So I got this, I would say, half a year ago at the beginning of the year, and it was a really small plant, but for the vigorous growth it put out, I feel like this is a really small plant, and you can see that it puts all of its energy into its trunk and it's forming these multiple shoots. So over time this will hopefully look like a miniature bonsai. You get this really nice looking stem and also these fatty roots, and I will try in the future to expose them a little bit more to make a beautiful display. And the leaves also have some texture to them. They are really leathery. I feel like they can hold on to a little bit more moisture, like let's say a clover from a meadow. But this is a really nice plant. It usually puts out tons and tons of flowers, but right now we only have one, but a lot of buds are forming. This is also growing on the rooftop outside of my flat, so it also was very heat stressed with this European heat wave that we had, but it survived it miraculously. Nothing happened to it. It is really drought tolerant, although it is in a very airy mix. I think I used 50% inorganic material and 50% soil, organic soil. This is doing just amazing. However, if this dries out for longer periods of times, this plant can lose some of its lower leaves, and I feel like this can be beneficial if you're going into the bonsai direction. And as with most succulent plants, you can also decide how fast you want this plant to be growing. If you fertilize it more, it will grow much faster, which is fine for me because it just gets more bushier and you get those side shoots which contribute to this beautiful crown, I would say. And the trunk just fattens up. It's just so amazing, so beautiful. For other growers, I heard that this plant puts out an immense amount of seeds which then germinate everywhere, but I had this in a plant growing tent and also outside now, and not a single seed has sprouted for me. I don't know, maybe it's just for me. If this is a concern for you, keep that in mind. If you have a greenhouse where it is moist-ish for a longer period of time, they might germinate better and might become a pest, I think. But for me, this is not an issue, at least for now. So I really love this plant. I hope I can propagate this somehow. I'm pretty sure I can take some side shoots and root them in some media and some suitable media, but I'm hesitant to do that because I really like the growth habit that this plant is putting out for me. So I really love this plant. And usually I'm not super into yellow flowers, but this is a really cold toned yellow, and when this plant is really full with those yellow flowers, it's just really nice to see. It's just a beautiful pop of color, and I am not mad about it. If they would be pink, I would love it much more, but I am not complaining. This is a beautiful plant, and I would say very beginner friendly. If you put it in the right media, they will not rot. They are prone to root rot if they stay moist for a longer period of time, and they do not like to dry out too much. But once they are well established in their pot and they have a really higher pot to crown ratio, this is not an issue. So these were my top 5 small plants highlight edition. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to this channel. The 5 small plants low light edition will definitely be the next video, so stay tuned and see you in the next video. Bye!